Host of great guests for reaction. Former CIA analyst and head of the Berg Associates consulting firm, Laurie Johnson. Author and geopolitical expert, Dr. Gulrez Sheikh. And senior research fellow at the Global Policy Institute, George Zamueli. Gentlemen, you're all much welcome. George, can we kick off with you? Vladimir Zelensky has legally banned any talks with Vladimir Putin years ago. Now he's saying the Russian president is the only Russian he'll speak to. Why is he adamant that he won't speak to anyone else?
Well, I don't know. I think he's scrambling around, probably taking his cues from Donald Trump, since Donald Trump has now elevated his dialogue with the Russians to a very friendly personal telephone call the other day, and now the promises to have a one-to-one meeting in Saudi Arabia sometime in the near future, and then a mutual visits to one another's countries. So clearly, Trump is elevating his relationship with Putin to a very high degree. He's always said that he's always had good relations with Putin. So Zelensky is taking his cues. I mean, he knows that his only hope of getting anywhere is to keep on the right side of Trump. So if he were to rule out talking to Putin, this would only antagonize Trump, and that's the last thing he wants to do.
Laurie, Lindsey Graham spoke with Mr. Zelensky on the sidelines of the conference in Munich, saying Donald Trump won't do to Ukraine what the US did in Afghanistan. Are the situations comparable?
Well, Lindsey Graham's in no position to declare that. He doesn't, Donald Trump doesn't confide in him, number one. Number two, Trump has already done that, and he's done it to Europe, too. Well, we saw on Wednesday both the combination of Donald Trump's phone call and then the speech by Pete Hegseth at the defense ministers' meeting for NATO was the equivalent of Donald Trump saying to Ukraine and NATO, you're fired. This is, Europe was shocked. They've been in like a 70-year relationship with the United States. And the United States essentially showed up on Wednesday and said, we're getting a divorce. And I'm running off with the next door neighbor. Because now the United States says, hey, if you want to provide any security assistance to Ukraine, the Europeans, you got to do it. If you send any troops into Ukraine, it's not going to be under the auspices of NATO. So if you get into trouble, can it implement Article 5? And the Ukraine's never getting into NATO. We're not going to accept it. And we're throwing all the aid requirements on you.
Gulrez,
they don't know what to do.
Gulrez, there seems to be something just overriding all these developments, and that's the war itself. Because, can I put the point to you, why isn't Vladimir Zelensky rushing to hold talks as soon as possible? Surely saving the lives of his under-pressure troops is critical, not looking for what he calls favourable conditions before talks can begin.
Well, conditions are not favorable for him anyway. And if you talk about Zelensky right now, he's navigating a complex scenario wherein military, political and diplomatic elements are all there. And he's trying to actually make a balance between all of them. And actually, he is wanting some kind of security guarantees from the Western countries, particularly United States of America, which he is not getting under Trump. And without that, he will lose his power. And if you look at his supporters in Europe, particularly today, it's only Great Britain and nobody else. And Great Britain is also there because of their more than 200 years old Russophobia. Because of that, they are supporting him, but they are also not in a condition to support him. Some time back, there was actually a report that Great Britain is having something around 40 or 50 tanks in working condition. And we have also seen their naval capabilities in Red Sea. So they are not positioned to support him anyway, but he is still trying to gain some support, but he is also banking, I think, on one leverage, and that is through the resources of Ukraine. Because some time back, Donald Trump was hinting that he want the United States of America want the critical rare earth minerals. So he might be thinking that via those minerals and resources, he might get some support. But
Okay.
I don't think that this is also happening in his favor. So he's walking on a very thin ice right now.
George, the German president spoke at the Munich conference calling on Europe not to behave like, quote, a deer caught in the headlights amid Trump's foreign policy moves. Why the metaphor, and what role do you expect Brussels to play in the years to come in regional security?
Well, the Europeans are in a real bind here because the whole Ukrainian project was initially an American project. It was conceived, of course, many years ago, back at the time of the Maidan in 2014, particularly the Democratic Party and Victoria Nuland. And then, of course, it escalated very much under Biden. And they pushed the Europeans to pursue a policy that was contrary to the interests of Europe. It worked very well for the Americans, but it worked very badly for Europe. But eventually, the Europeans really took it over in enthusiasm and excitement and rabid Russophobia. And now suddenly they're witnessing a reversal from the United States. They don't know how to respond. But the one thing they know that they shouldn't do is to say anything that is likely to antagonize Donald Trump. So you notice what they're saying is that, well, we really think, the Trump administration is making a lot of good points. We really do need to spend much more on our military. Yes, I mean, it's absolutely right. 2% isn't enough. Maybe 3% isn't enough. And they say, yeah, we've really got to shape up and take care of our own security. I mean, at the moment, they don't know what to do. They're probably hoping that either Trump will fall flat on his face, or they're hoping to see Trump off, because after all, he's only got one term as a president. And the way American politics works, with midterms coming up, really, basically in about 18 months or so's time, they're hoping that after that he'll be a lame duck president, and then they can start, looking for the future and maybe having somebody in the Oval Office
Big
who'd
risk,
be
though, isn't
more
it? Big
sympathetic
risk
to their position.
Yeah. Big risk. J.D. Vance looks strong at the moment. Laurie, just on a similar theme to what George was saying there, Berlin's defense chief Pistorius admits that if the US reduces its military presence in Europe, its allies won't be able to fill the void anytime soon. So what options does the EU have, and will it be able to meet the 5% defense spend goal set by Washington?
I'll make it simple. They have no options, and they won't be able to meet it. Germany is in the process of deindustrializing. The economy in the UK is a wreck. Similarly in France. There is no industrial base anymore in Europe that could produce or even begin to match. They've already conceded that even the United States plus Europe combined cannot match the industrial output on military hardware and weapons that Russia can produce. So you take the United States out of the equation, Europe's even at more of a disadvantage. So this is, look, the reality is Europe is being exposed now for the second-class power that it is. It's not really a power. There's no majority. There's not a single country in Europe where you have a majority party and a majority of the population believe one thing. You've got all these fragments in every society, whether it's the AfD in Germany, where they get they're the top party and they get 28% of the vote. So unlike the United States, where there was a majority support for Donald Trump, no European country has that. And frankly, I think Donald Trump has a vendetta, particularly against the UK, for their past involvement in fabricating Russiagate, trying to destroy him politically, and even Keir Starmer sending his own members of his party to campaign against Trump. Trump's not going to shed a single tear when Britain goes down.
Gulrez, European leaders, they're demanding a place at the negotiating table when it begins, with the EU chief saying the bloc must negotiate from a position of strength. Is it going to be able to do that?
How is that possible when they don't have their own strength? Their militaries are mess. They don't have military power right now. The powerhouse of the European industry used to be Germany, and after they have put bans and all type of tariffs on Russia because of the very high-priced energy they are getting. They have started deindustrialization. You look at France, there is no political stability right now in France. Even you look in political condition in Germany, that is also very bad right now. And you had a Labour government some time back in Great Britain, but I don't know, and I wonder that will that government will be able to finish its 5 years term or not. So in that condition and situation, how can they take a seat on the high table and talk with the position of strength? Right now, the real thing is that, and the reality is that NATO countries minus United States of America, they are just a poodle. And anyway, even Great Britain is a poodle of United States of America. And when US does not want them to sit on the high table to talk, then how can they get that high table? No, they are not having that.
We've got about a minute and a half left, so I'll get your views just briefly, gentlemen, if we could. Just, George, on the last few days, the developments coming at speed, does it surprise you what's happening and the ramifications of them, or was it inevitable?
Well, it was inevitable that Donald Trump would launch a dramatic diplomatic initiative. It was inevitable that the Europeans would be shocked and nonplussed by it. Where this leads, I think, is still unclear. There's all kinds of very, very difficult crossroads ahead. But Trump was always going to make a big effort to bring this to an end. We'll see where it's going to go.
Laurie, what was your great takeaway from